My son leaned in to hug me at his wife's 40th birthday dinner, and while the whole table was laughing at somebody's toast, he put his mouth next to my ear and whispered 5 words that stopped my heart. "Don't eat anything tonight. Nothing." Then he pulled back, smiled like nothing had happened, and raised his glass with everyone else. 10 minutes later, I excused myself to get a glass of water. I walked down the hallway toward the kitchen, pushed the door open about 6 inches, and what I saw on that counter explained 14 months of my life. It explained the dizzy spells. It explained the memory gaps. It explained why my own doctor had started using the word decline, and why my daughter-in-law had started using the word facility. My name is Walter. I'm 71 years old, and by the end of this story, you're going to understand why the most dangerous thing in my son's house wasn't a person. It was a dinner plate, a white plate with a blue rim, and why, when the truth finally came out in a courtroom, the person who put me there was the one who left in handcuffs. But first, you need to understand how it started, because it started with kindness. It always starts with kindness. My wife Ellen passed 2 years ago this spring. 44 years together. When she went, I didn't fall apart loudly. I fell apart the quiet way, the way men my age do. I stopped cooking, stopped answering the phone, started talking to the television. My son Michael saw it. And his wife Christine did something that, at the time, I would have called a blessing. She instituted Sunday dinner. Every Sunday, 5 o'clock, their house, no excuses. Family takes care of family, Walter. She'd squeeze my hand when she said it. And listen, those first months were good. Pot roast, her famous gravy, my granddaughter Lily doing her homework at the counter. Christine even served me on Ellen's china. We'd divided Ellen's things after the funeral, and Christine had asked for the everyday set, white with a blue rim. So there's always a piece of Ellen at the table, she said. And every Sunday, my food came out on that blue-rimmed plate. Mine specifically. Walter's plate, Lily used to announce, carrying it in with 2 hands. I thought it was the sweetest thing in the world. I want you to hold on to that plate. Look at it in your mind. White, blue rim, a little chip near the edge from 1994. Because that plate is the whole story. The dinners had one more feature. Christine made mine separately, always. Low sodium for you, Walter. I'm watching that blood pressure, even if you won't. Separate pan, separate gravy, served already plated, while the rest of the food hit the table family style. Who questions that? A daughter-in-law watching an old man's salt. They write greeting cards about women like that. About 10 months ago, I can date it almost exactly because it was the Sunday after Thanksgiving. The Mondays started. That's what I called them before I understood them. The Mondays. I'd wake up the morning after Sunday dinner, feeling like my head was wrapped in wet wool, dizzy, thick-tongued. I'd lose words, simple words, like thermostat, like my granddaughter's teacher's name. Twice I found the kettle on the stove, with no memory of filling it. Once, and this one scared me, I found my car keys in the refrigerator, and I sat down at the kitchen table and cried, because I watched my own mother go, and I know what keys in the refrigerator means. Tuesday, I'd feel a little better. By Thursday, I was myself, sharp enough to do the crossword in pen, sharp enough to argue politics with Ray at the barber shop. And then Sunday would come, and then Monday. 14 months, friends. 14 months of that pattern sitting right in front of me. Bad Mondays, clear Thursdays. And I never once connected it to a calendar. You know who did connect it? 2 people. One of them was trying to save my life. The other one was counting on it. Here's how you take a healthy man's mind away from him without touching him. You narrate it away. It started small. Christine, at dinner, light as air. Walter, you told us that story last week. Remember? I hadn't. Or had I? That's the poison of it. Nobody remembers everything, so every accusation lands somewhere plausible. Then she started a notebook. She showed it to Michael, right in front of me, like I was a lamp. "I've been writing down the episodes," she said. Episodes. The doctors will want a record. And in that notebook, I saw it later, in a courtroom, marked as an exhibit against her, was every stumble I'd made, dated and timed. What the notebook didn't say was that every single entry was a Sunday night or a Monday, 390 days of decline, and not one Thursday in it. She took over my medical life the way she took over the dinners, sweetly, completely. She drove me to Dr. Patel's because you shouldn't drive if you're having spells, Walter. She did the talking in the exam room. She used words she'd rehearsed, sundowning, confusion events, words that come out of a search engine, not a mouth. And Dr. Patel, a good man drowning in 15-minute appointments, looked at a 71-year-old widower with a family member documenting memory loss, and he wrote what anyone would write: cognitive decline, possible early dementia, recommend neurological evaluation. She scheduled that evaluation herself. She was so helpful about it. Circled the date on my kitchen calendar in red pen, March the 12th. Remember that date. It matters twice. And then came the brochures, left casually on my own coffee table after she'd visited. Sunrise Meadows, Golden Horizons, glossy photos of old men playing chess, and on the back page, the part she'd already highlighted, monthly costs, and a section titled Transitioning Your Loved One's Assets. One evening in January, I overheard her on the phone in my own hallway. She thought I was asleep in the chair. I only caught one sentence before the floor creaked under me. She said, "No, it has to be guardianship, not power of attorney. Power of attorney he can revoke." I told myself I'd misheard. The wet wool, you know. That was the cruelest part of the whole thing. She had built the perfect crime, because the crime itself convinced me I couldn't trust the only witness, me. Now, Michael, my boy. Around February, my son changed, and I read it completely wrong. He got quiet, distant. He started working late. He's a project manager. And suddenly, there were sight problems 3 nights a week. At Sunday dinners, he barely spoke to Christine. He watched things. He watched the kitchen door. He watched my plate come out. Once, I saw him standing over the counter, where my plate sat waiting, just looking down at it, and when Christine came in, he stepped away like a kid caught at the cookie jar. I thought their marriage was in trouble. I actually pulled him aside and told him, "God help me." I told him, "Whatever's going on with you two, work it out. That woman takes care of this family." He looked at me for a long moment. There was something in his face I hadn't seen since he was 9 years old and broke the neighbor's window, a secret straining against the glass. He said, "Dad, do you trust me?" Strange answer, isn't it? I said, "Of course." He nodded and said, "Then keep coming to dinner, every Sunday, no matter what." And he walked away before I could ask what on earth that meant. I know now what those late nights were. One of them was an elder law attorney named Susan Park. 2 of them were the county's Adult Protective Services intake line, and a detective in the Financial Crimes Unit who told my son the 4 words that shaped everything after: "We need physical evidence." Suspicion is smoke. Notebooks can be explained. A wife can say her father-in-law is imagining things, especially a father-in-law with a documented file of episodes. They needed the plate. Which brings us to March the 9th, Christine's 40th birthday. 3 days. Look at the calendar. 3 days before the neurological evaluation on March the 12th that would have put a doctor's signature on my incapacity. The dinner was big. Her mother Diane down from Toledo, 2 couples from their street, candles, a rented tablecloth. the good wine. And my blue-rimmed plate, already made, sitting alone on the counter under foil. The toast happened. The laughing happened, and my son hugged me and whispered, "Don't eat anything tonight. Nothing." Then he squeezed my shoulder twice, and I swear, friends, it was the 2 squeezes that got me out of that chair, because that was Ellen's signal. 44 years of church services and dull parties. 2 squeezes meant, "Pay attention, Walter." Our son had watched us his whole life. He knew the code. So I stood up, said something about water, and walked toward the kitchen. The kitchen door was the swinging kind. I pushed it open 6 inches. I want to tell you exactly what I saw, in the order I saw it, because I have now described this scene under oath, and I will describe it the same way to you. I saw the blue-rimmed plate, foil peeled back. I saw, next to it, a white coffee mug, and inside the mug, the back end of a spoon working, grinding, in small hard circles. The sound was what I noticed most. A gritty little scrape, 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 like someone crushing aspirin. My mother used to crush aspirin into jam when I was a boy. It is not a sound you forget. I saw 2 pill bottles by the sink, not white pharmacy bottles in a caddy like you'd expect in any house. These were amber bottles with the labels half peeled off, the way you peel a label when it has a name on it that shouldn't be there. And I saw my daughter-in-law tap the powder from that mug into the gravy on my plate, only my plate, and stir it with a fork, and then lick the back of the fork clean, casual as sugar, and drop it in the sink. Then she picked up her phone and I heard her say, she was on speaker, low, to her mother Diane, who was sitting 40 feet away in the dining room, texting under the tablecloth. "His plate's ready. Big dose tonight. The evaluation's Thursday. He needs to be a mess." The evaluation. March the 12th. She wasn't drugging me to hurt me that night, you understand. She was staging me. 14 months of staging me. Every Sunday a rehearsal, and the neurologist's office was opening night. I don't know how I walked back to that table. I genuinely don't remember the 10 steps. What I remember is sitting down, and the plate arriving in front of me, Ellen's plate, the chip from 1994 facing me like a little wound, and Christine's hand landing warm on my shoulder as she said, to the whole table, bright as birthday candles, "I made yours special, Walter. Eat it while it's hot." I didn't eat. I pressed my hand to my stomach, made a face, and said the shrimp cocktail at lunch was fighting back. And I watched Christine watch my fork, all night. She refilled my water twice, moved the plate closer once, and said, "You have to keep your strength up," in a voice that I will hear in bad dreams for the rest of my life. And here is where my son showed me who he was. Michael stood up, took my untouched plate, and said, "I'll wrap it up. Lunch for you tomorrow, Dad." Christine's head turned fast. Too fast. "Just scrape it, honey. It doesn't keep." Michael smiled at his wife on her birthday and said, "Dad loves your gravy," and walked into the kitchen with the plate and, I learned this later, slid the entire thing, gravy and all, into a gallon freezer bag inside his gym duffel and replaced it with a clean plate scraped into the trash. He drove me home. 2 blocks from my house he pulled the truck over, turned off the engine, and my 38-year-old son put his head on the steering wheel and cried like a child. Then he told me everything. He told me about the night in January he'd come home early and found the amber bottles in a zipped pouch in Christine's gym bag, lorazepam, and an over-the-counter sleep antihistamine, and the lorazepam prescribed to Diane, her mother. 6 refills in 5 months, for a woman who lives alone. He told me about the folder he'd found in the trunk of Christine's car, a real folder, tabbed, labeled in her neat teacher's handwriting, W. Guardianship. Inside, the notebook of episodes, assisted living cost sheets, a printout on emergency conservatorship, and a signed listing agreement, dated and ready, for the sale of a house. My house, friends. My house, that Ellen and I paid off in 1998. The agent's business card was clipped to it. "I couldn't tell you, Dad," he said. "The lawyer said if you changed how you acted at dinner, she'd stop, and we'd have nothing, and the file she built on you was strong enough that it'd be your word against hers. And Dad, on paper, you're a man having episodes." He looked at me. I needed her to hand me the evidence. Tonight she plated it. My son ate at that woman's table for 8 weeks, sleeping in that house, kissing her goodnight, building a case. People ask me if I'm proudest of him for the freezer bag. I'm not. I'm proudest that in 14 months, the only person who never once believed I was losing my mind was my boy. The plate went to a private lab Tuesday morning. Chain of custody documented the way Detective Morales had coached him. The results came back in 9 days. The gravy on my special low-sodium plate contained crushed lorazepam and diphenhydramine at, and I'm quoting the toxicologist's report, a combined dose, grossly inappropriate for an adult of the subject's age, consistent with symptoms of sedation, confusion, dizziness, and memory impairment. 14 months of Mondays, itemized on 1 page. My blood work, drawn that same Tuesday, still showed traces from the previous Sundays. Dr. Patel read the lab report in silence, took off his glasses, and apologized to me for 11 straight minutes. I told him what I'll tell you. She didn't fool him because he was careless. She fooled him because she was good. Now, Detective Morales gave us a choice, and this is the part where my wife's stubbornness, God rest her, reached out of the grave and possessed her husband and son at the same time. We could confront Christine immediately, or we could keep quiet, let me keep declining, skip nothing, cancel nothing, and let her walk her plan all the way to a courthouse, because drugging a man is one crime. But filing a sworn petition to seize control of his life and assets, based on a condition you manufactured, that, the prosecutor said, turns a domestic he said, she said into intent, premeditation, and fraud upon the court. Her own paperwork would become the confession. So I gave the performance of my life. I went to the March 12th evaluation, having eaten nothing from her kitchen for 2 weeks. And I shuffled, and I paused, and I asked the nice neurologist the same question twice. Michael squeezed my shoulder in the waiting room, twice. Christine filed the emergency guardianship petition on March the 24th. She attached her notebook. She attached the medical records she herself had narrated into existence. She checked the box, requesting authority over all real property and financial accounts. She swore to all of it, under penalty of perjury, in her neat teacher's handwriting. The hearing was set for April the 16th. She spent the 3 weeks in between measuring my house. I know, because she brought the agent through on a Thursday, while I sat in my chair pretending to doze, and I listened to a stranger in my hallway say the words, "Great bones," while Christine's voice answered, "We can close fast." He won't be living here. 19 days, friends. I counted them the way I once counted smiles at a funeral I heard about. 19 days of biting my tongue so hard, it's a wonder I can still talk. A guardianship hearing is a small, quiet thing. A conference room with a flag, a judge named Whitfield, a court reporter, Christine and her lawyer on one side with the notebook, me and mine on the other. Her lawyer went first, and he was gentle and sorrowful, and he painted a picture of a fading old man and a devoted daughter-in-law, and Christine dabbed her eyes at the right moments, and I sat there doing my very best fog. Then my attorney, Susan Park, stood up and said, "Your Honor, before we respond, the respondent would like to address the court." And I stood up out of that chair with a straight back, buttoned my jacket, and recited, from memory, dates included, The last 14 months of my life. I watched Christine's face while I did it. I watched her understand, in real time, that the fog had been looking back at her for 6 weeks. Then Susan handed up the toxicology report, then my blood work. Then the pharmacy records the prosecutor had subpoenaed, Diane's lorazepam, 6 refills, dates lining up with Sunday dinners like fence posts. Then the freezer bag plate, photographed on Christine's own counter, timestamp in the corner. And then Michael, my son, took the stand, looked at his wife of 11 years, and testified for 40 minutes without his voice breaking once. Until the very end, when Susan asked him why he'd waited to tell his father, and he said, "Because my dad raised me to finish what I start," and looked at me, and that's when both of us went to pieces, and I am not ashamed of it. Judge Whitfield denied the petition in 4 sentences. Then he did something Susan told me later she's seen twice in 30 years. He referred the entire file, the petition, the notebook, the sworn statements, to the county prosecutor from the bench, and he looked at Christine over his glasses and said, "Ma'am, you filed this in the wrong courtroom. The right one will be in touch." She was arrested in May. Poisoning, attempted fraud, perjury. Her lawyer negotiated, as lawyers do. There was restitution and there was a sentence. And Diane, the mother, the pill supply, the voice on speakerphone, took a plea and testified. The divorce was quiet. Lily lives with Michael. She's 12. She's Ellen's spitting image. And every Sunday she sets my place at their new table, with a plain white plate, because some china we do not keep. One more thing. I debated whether to tell you this part, and I've decided you deserve the whole truth. When Detective Morales had the pharmacy records pulled, the lorazepam refills didn't start 14 months ago. They started 3 years ago. And 3 years ago, my Ellen, who Christine so lovingly helped with her medications during those last hard months, who got so confused at the end, so foggy, so unlike herself, that we all just called it the illness. 3 years ago is when the first bottle was filled. The detective asked me a question in his office last summer that I have not been able to say out loud since. There was no plate to test. There is no answer coming. I visit Ellen on Thursdays now. Thursdays were always our clear days. And I tell her Lily's report card, and I leave that question with her, where it belongs. So here is what I'll leave you with. If someone in your family is declining, look at the calendar before you look at the doctor. Patterns don't lie. People do. And if your gut tells you something is wrong at a table where everything looks like love, set down your fork. You can always eat later. Tell me in the comments, the moment you first suspected the plate, was it the low-sodium excuse or the blue rim? I read every single comment, and last week's regulars already know I answer them. And if you believe families should protect their elders instead of preying on them, subscribe. Because next Sunday I'm telling you about a woman who told her father-in-law, "You live here for free." She had no idea whose name was on every house on the street. Take care of each other and watch the quiet sons. They see everything.